So you guys have been looking at different ways to write the equations of lines. You guys started with the old slope-intercept form from grade 9. So grade 9 review looks something like this. Then you got into the point slope or the slope point form. It goes back and forth, which looked something. Let's clean it up a little bit. Something like this, which of course just a modification of the slope formula. There's two other common forms of ways to write lines, and those are the standard form and the general form, which are almost identical to each other. These two are almost perfectly identical. There's a slight difference between the two, but they have, almost everything else is exactly the same. Standard, which you'll often see, is something like this for standard, and then this is the general form. And the only difference is where the C value is. And now the only thing is A, B, and C. You've got the A, you got the B, you got the C. These three, these guys are all integers. So there's no fractions or anything like that. They're integers. And the only difference between the two is the standard form has the AX plus BY is equal to C value, and then the general form is equal to 0. But aside from that, there really isn't much difference between the two. So, for example, this could be like, 5x plus 2y is equal to -4. Okay, so that would be the standard form. But the general form of the exact same thing would be 5x plus 2y. You'd add the 4 to both sides, so it'd be plus 4 on this side is equal to 0, and that's the general form. Again, there's advantages and disadvantages for each form, so like that Chef Boyardee thing we talked about before. But they're almost identical to each other, and they're really, really easy to go back and forth between the two, just moving the C from one side to the other side. It's really simple. The great thing about this form, and one of the biggest advantages of using these forms, especially the general form, this comes in really handy when you want to graph with intercepts, and that's where it really comes in handy, because when you graph the intercepts, you make either the x value or the y value equal to 0, which makes the entire thing it's attached to equal to 0, and it just makes it a lot easier. So that's the difference between the two, standard and general form, and between slope-intercept form, point-slope-intercept form, standard and general. These are basically the four main ways that lines are graphed and how we actually work with them. So maybe we'll look a little bit at the standard general a little bit and how that's used in a couple of your sheets, and just show you how things sort of connect and move things around a little bit. So here's one of your sheets that'll come up in your OneNote yet, and this is converting slope-intercept to standard forms. So the slope-intercept y equals -1110x minus 1. Converting this to standard form, it's not super hard to do. The one thing that throws out right away from this question is there's a fraction, and you can't have fractions in standard general form, so we've got to get rid of the fraction. And the easiest way to do that is just multiply by the denominator across the entire thing. So if I wrote this thing out, I'm going to write this out. The denominator is 10, so I'm going to be multiplying by 10. But if I take and multiply this entire thing by 10. Okay, so there's the equation. We'll multiply just everything by 10, so to speak. It's not technically written correctly, but that's okay. We're going to multiply everything by 10. This would become 10y. The 10s would cancel over here, so that's -11x, and then take away 10. So that's what it would be when you multiply everything across by 10. Now the thing is, you have to have it in the correct order for standard form as well. So first of all, we took care of the fractions, but it needs to be x, y equals a number. So I need to move this part over here. I need to move my 11x to this side. So I need to add 11x to both sides. So that would be 11x. And there's my 10y. And then I can leave that minus 10 on the other side. Okay, so in standard form, this would be 11x plus 10y is equal to -10. So that's what it would be in standard form. If I wanted this in general form, it would be almost identical. In general form, it would be 11x plus 10y but then I would move that negative 10 to their side, so I'd add 10 to both sides, and it'd be equal to 0. So that's what that one would be in general form. So you can see the standard form and general form are very, very similar to each other, and it's really, really easy to go back and forth between the two. Okay, so let's look at the next one here, number 2. Slope-intercept form is y equals minus 2x minus 9. I don't have any fractions to worry about. I just need to worry about the order. So here, this one I had to worry about the fractions. Fractions are bad. And I had to worry about the order. Second one here, I don't have any fractions, so I don't have to worry about that, but I do need to worry about the order in this one. So I would need to bring my minus 2x over to the other side, so I need to add 2x to both sides. So this would be 2x, and the y is just y, and that'd be equal to negative 9. So that would be the standard form for that one. And then if I wanted to put it into general form, got the 2x plus the y, I have to add 9 to both sides. Okay, so this would be plus 9 over here, and that'd be equal to 0. So that's what it would be in general form. And that's generally how this type of thing works. So it's not hard necessarily, especially between standard and general. You just got to watch out for the fractions and slope-intercept form, and sometimes we just, to take care of it, just multiply everything by the denominator, and it'll all be taken care of. Here's another one of your sheets that you'll have coming up, and says convert each function into general form, then sketch the graph of the line. So these are given in different types of forms, but this one here is, the first one here, this is just standard form. So to convert that into general form is really easy. The x plus or minus 2y is perfectly fine. The only thing is I need to move that negative 2 over, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And that's it in general form, really easy. Now the thing is, to sketch it, general form is great for sketching because it's all about intercepts and stuff like that. It works really, really well. I often also like to use my standard form for graphing with intercepts because I actually find it a little bit easier than using the general form, but it's the same idea. So if I would start with my expression, which is x minus 2y equals negative 2, the whole idea is to use intercepts by making one of the x or the y equal to 0. So for example, if I make my x value equal to 0, then in order for this to work, I can, make x equal to 0. It's gone. Don't have to worry about it. Then I would divide by negative 2 on both sides. That cancels, and y is equal to 1. So when x is equal to 0, my y value is equal to 1. So that's my y-intercept is 1. And you do the exact same type of thing. X minus 2y is equal to negative 2. You do the exact same thing with your y value. Make your y value equal to 0. So you can make that 0, which means this whole thing is equal to 0 because you're multiplying by 0. And that tells me that x is equal to negative 2. That's all I got left is x is equal to negative 2. So when y is 0, my x value will be negative 2, and there's my two intercepts. And then all I have to do is connect the two. So if I connect the two, it might look something like that. Okay, so that's how we can use the general or standard form and use intercepts in order to graph lines. Number 4 on the same page is the same type of idea, but this one, if we're going to convert number 4 here, we got that negative 1 over 5. So we need to take care of no fractions allowed in standard or general form. So the first thing I have to do is I have to multiply everything by 5. If I multiply everything by 5, I'm going to have 5y is equal to, if I multiply 1 over 5 by 5, that gives me 1. So that gives me negative 1x plus 5. So that's the whole thing multiplied by 5. And now I've got to move things around. I've got to move the x to the other side. So that would be 1x. So you don't have to write the 1 if you don't want to. Plus 5y. It would then be equal to 5. So that's what it would be in standard form. And then in general form, I'll just drop the 1 for the x. So 5 minus 5, 0. So this would be my standard form, and that would be my general form, something like that. So then if I wanted to sketch the graph for it, I'm just going to use I like using my standard form better. I said that before. My standard form is x plus 5y is equal to 5. All right, now if I make x equal to 0, I would have 5y is equal to 5, and then obviously my y value be equal to 1. So when x is equal to 0, my y value is equal to 1. Now, if I make my y value equal to 0, that whole thing becomes 0, and x is just equal to 5, and that's it. So my x value would be equal to 5, and these are my intercepts. So I'm graphing using my intercepts. So when y is equal to 0, I got an x value of 5, and then I can draw my line something like that. Okay, so that's sort of how that works. So converting between the two works really, really easy, and standard form for me, I love using standard or general form, using intercepts to graph lines. Okay, so similar for this sheet that's also going to be in your OneNote. This one here, it says sketch the graph using intercepts, and this means, well, you don't have to, but generally this means use the standard or the general form. I would like to use the standard form. I just find it easier. In fact, it's in standard form already for me, which makes things a little bit easier. And then you're supposed to state the slope. Okay, well, first things first. If I'm going to use my intercepts, I'm going to make this equal to 0. I'm going to make my x value 0. And if I do that, my y value would have to be equal to 1. So when x is equal to 0, my y value would be equal to 1. Now I do the same thing. I'm going to make my y equal to 0. So I'm going to make that equal to 0. And if my y is equal to 0, I've got 4x is equal to negative 3. So I'd have 4x is equal to negative 3. And then x is going to be negative 3 fourths. So a little bit different. So my y value is 0. My x value is negative 3 quarters, which is right about there. So these guys are really close together. And my line would look something like this. Okay. All right, now to find the slope of this, where it works really nicely is convert this into slope-intercept form. I mean, you could try and do like a rise over run type idea. You could do that. You could do the rise of 1 and the run of the 3/4 over here. You could do that if you want. You could also convert that into slope-intercept form if you want. It doesn't really matter. There's different ways you can do it. If we converted this, we would have, I'll start with 4x minus 3y is equal to negative 3. I need the y by itself. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And then I'd have to divide by negative 3 across everything. So divide that by negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. And this would be negative 4 divided by negative 3 will give you plus 4/3 x. Okay, and if I rearrange this, y equals 4/3 x plus 1. And this is slope-intercept form, so my slope would be 4/3. So this is one way to do it. You could also have just done, you know this intercept, do the rise over the run for the intercepts. The rise is, let's see, if you did rise over run, the rise here, so rise over run, the rise is 1. It's the y-intercept divided by the x-intercept, which is 3/4. And if you divide 1 divided by 3/4, you got to invert and multiply. This will give you 4/3, which is the exact same thing that we have here. So there's different ways you can find the slope once you have it. Remember, that's like the Chef Boyardee thing, and all the same type of thing, just different ways to look at it, different combinations. You could convert to slope-intercept form to find it. You could do the rise over run using the intercepts, which is really, really easy. You could do either way. It doesn't make any difference. Just some ways a little bit faster than others, and some people just have different preferences. So this is standard form, general form, and how we can actually use them to graph things, find slopes, find intercepts, that type of thing.